Good evening and welcome to another edition of Choose the Challenge. I am LaWanna Bradford, your host for this evening. And for all of you who've been following us on E360 TV as well as throughout social media, we want to say thank you for coming back. And you know what's so special about this show is we dare to push the envelope and have conversations about things that may be a little unsettling for some people. But on the other side of it, there's always hope, inspiration, laughter, and a lot of love. This platform is designed for all people, but specifically for women who are finding themselves trapped, compartmentalized, unable to free themselves to live to the best and highest version of themselves, whether that's through mindset limitations, systemic and institutional limitations, injustices, or perhaps you're just in that relationship that is not the healthiest for you. And today I'm really excited because I have a special guest. Mr. Bryan Martin is joining us. Some of you who follow social media may have seen his coffee morning dances. And if you've seen it, you've been inspired. It's made you feel really good. And the reason why I wanted Bryan to come on is I found myself gravitating to these videos. And then I learned a little bit about his backstory. And his backstory deals with coming from a dark place of sadness, of loss, of grief, into a place of joy and living his best life. He's also known as Sea Lion Bryan. He is by profession a marine biologist, an educator, an author, but like many of us in life, he has suffered loss. He lost his partner and he lost his father all in the same year. And on top of that, the pandemic hit. And we all know how stressful that time was and still is for many people. So when you're crippled by being in that dark space and not knowing what to do, I want you to lean in because Bryan is going to share with you some tools that he found within himself to generate joy, to reinvigorate himself, to come back to life, and to now be touching millions of people around the world through his dancing, through his inspiration, and through his messages of hope and love. And here is Mr. Bryan Martin. How's it going, Bryan?
Good. How are you? Thank you so much for having me on. What a fantastic introduction.
Well, I am so glad you're here. I know our schedules have been a little squirrely, but we made it happen.
Yes. And welcome to the holidays, everybody.
Yes, it is that time of the year. And speaking of which, Bryan, the holidays, it's a happy time, but for so many people, it can become a very sad time. And you've had your time where you've kind of spiraled in that dark abyss. And if you don't mind, can you tell us a little bit about that? And when did you get to the point where you felt like, okay, if I don't stop this spiral, if I don't somehow find the light, there may not be a tomorrow for me?
Yeah, that's that's a question that a lot of people find themselves asking when they're completely surrounded by grief. So as you mentioned, I did lose my dad, and then just about 4 months later, my partner at the time, Clayton, my late partner, came down with it was a ringworm infection from digging in his mom's yard, and it was extremely aggressive. And so the doctors wanted to put him on antifungals, and they kept adding to the dose, but they weren't checking his liver values. And I had to rush him to the hospital, and that's where they told us that he went into acute liver failure. So I went from losing my dad and to now losing the person I thought I was spending the rest of my life with, and I had to go right into caregiver mode. So for the next 8 months, I still hadn't really grieved losing my dad, but I wasn't able to process a lot of what I was having to go through because every day I had to show up for him. I had to show up for Clayton. I had to go to work full time. I had to make sure that everything was taken care of in the house. And so I was very detached kind of from myself, which most people who are caregivers understand when you're in that role. But once Clayton passed away, I switched from caregiver to caregriever, and you cannot really compartmentalize like you did. You can try to keep yourself busy, but all that time that was spent taking care of him kept me so busy I couldn't think. Um, when your person passes away, or the person you're caring about passes away, all that time you spent every day taking care of them is now time that's literally pushed back on you, and you don't know how to fill it. And your head and your heart fills with all of this grief. And that's that's like where I was at. And it was really hard. So year one was a fog. I was just worried about getting through the day. I was worried about, and this goes right into what you're talking about, the holidays, the firsts. I was so afraid of all the firsts in year number one. I was afraid of his first birthday, my first birthday, our first anniversary by myself. And then I got through those. They were difficult, but it was the holidays that hit me so hard. I completely remember it because now, you know, you can't even get past Halloween and get to Thanksgiving without the Christmas decorations and all the, all the winter holiday stuff is coming out in all the stores. And I wasn't able to go home to be with my family for Thanksgiving. I had to take care of the animals, so I wasn't going anywhere. I was just going to have Thanksgiving by myself. I filled that card up with everything I wanted for Thanksgiving. I was going to give myself anything I wanted to eat on that day. I was going to make myself all the favorite comfort foods, everything. And I had been pushing a full cart in the back of the grocery store, and they switched the music on to Christmas music. And I just started crying in the middle of the grocery store, and I had to leave. I left the entire cart in the store full, just walked away from it because I just couldn't. I went home and I didn't have a holiday. I couldn't do it. I couldn't set up my Christmas tree that year. I didn't have any Thanksgiving plans. New Year's, I was asleep. I went to bed at 8 o'clock. I didn't want to see everybody kissing their loved one at midnight. It was really difficult, really difficult. And then that gets me into year two. And year two was very clear. It was crystal clear. I knew he wasn't coming back. That whole first year, I was like, this is a dream. You're going to walk in the door. Year two, I knew it was just real, and it hurt. And I was mad. I was very, very angry that year. And I thought year three was going to be a little bit better, but the pandemic hit. And that's when I was at a complete loss, all alone. I had to go to work and take care of animals and then be trapped by myself. I couldn't go to the gym to keep myself entertained. I couldn't try. I was trying to make new friends, and that had to stop. So I was forced completely back to square one when that pandemic hit. It was crazy.
That's one of the things sometimes we don't think about when we're going through hard times, and especially grief, that there are those sensory triggers, right? You had your plan, you knew what you were going to do, how you're going to celebrate Thanksgiving. Life is good, and then there's a trigger,
Mm-hmm.
and you started to spiral. And I want you to talk a little bit about mental and emotional well-being, because we know how important that is, and there's more and more focus being put on it. And since the pandemic, we have no idea how many people have been adversely impacted emotionally and mentally by being shut in and alone, because we're social beings, right? We're not meant to be in isolation, but due to that pandemic, many of us had no other option. With the work that you do now and the outreach that you do with individuals, do you ever talk about that mental health space and how people can take care of themselves as they take care of their physical bodies, start to take care of their emotional and mental well-being?
I do. I I always tell people, like, I'm sharing my story, and I share it very openly, because if it helps me. I've always wanted to share my emotions. Some people do not. I have my entire life. It makes me feel better. Um, and I think in a lot of ways I'm lucky because so many people are told not to share their feelings and to get over it or grow up, or life is tough, deal with it. And that's all true, but there's something to be said about your feelings being validated. A big thing that I tell people though is that I'm not a doctor, I'm not a therapist. I don't have all the answers. I just know what's worked for me. And so I share that in hopes that it helps somebody find their way. I think by me sharing, I'm trying to normalize it. Let I'm trying to let people know that it's okay to feel the way that you did. It's okay that you are grieving and you're sad for whatever it is. And we all experience grief in a very different manner. Some people, like, I can't compare my grief to anyone else's. A loss is a loss. What you feel in your heart for whatever you lost, that hurts you. And so I also see that people who usually don't feel like their grief's validated enough for them, they try to out grief other people. Oh, well, yeah, you lost your person, your partner, but I lost my child. You can't compare those two. They're both terrible things to go through. Um,
Exactly.
and so even sharing, I've seen how so many people are trying to cope with grief and don't know how, because we don't talk about it. We don't share about it. And just like you said, everyone was shut out because or like shut in by themselves because of the pandemic. What people often forget is that we're animals and we have just innate things within us, fight or flight, survival of the fittest responses. I mean, this is now my biology degree is coming out. But we have this fight or flight, and at the basis of grief and anger and fear and all of that is just safety. And so I try to let everybody know that if you can just tell yourself right now where you are, even though your head's got all the words going through it and your heart just hurts, you're safe. You're safe. And look for other people that are feeling the same way, because once you feel that, it takes a village. So if you find your village, you feel safer. And then we start building and building and building. And it was something that I noticed with the pandemic. I had been going through it for 2 years already and writing my widowed blog, but I never shared it on social media. Then when the pandemic hit, a couple months later, people were posting on Facebook and Instagram, and their words and their feelings in their posts mirrored what I said the first few months in year one of being widowed. And that's when it clicked. I was like, everyone is suffering loss and we're all going through a similar journey, but I'm 2 years ahead of everybody. The pandemic hurt for sure, but I could see that I was actually prepared a little bit more for it because of my losses. So then I started to share my widowed blog on social media, and the response was incredible, because all of these people, even though they weren't widowed, were connecting with me and what I was doing. And then I started to see in the comments people saying, I'm so alone, I can't see my children. I'm also so alone, I can't see. And they would make these side friendships with people that had the same grief in what they were going through, but we all under one blanket were coming together as a community that just needed to be together. And that's just, I was shocked. I was shocked to see that sharing my loss in that way could bring so many people together and make them feel at least safe, so that they were willing to just keep moving through and get to the next day. It's so powerful.
And I love what you're saying. And I think it's so interesting that when we go through our life's journey, we never know how it's ultimately going to be used. Like you said, you had been describing your experiences, your feelings, your emotions. You'd been going through this period of darkness and despair and isolation. The pandemic hit, and you're like, okay, more the same, right? And and then, through this affinity connection, you were able to resonate with people and say, wait a minute, I've got some messages too. Let me share. And I mean, look at the ripple effect that's happening because of your journey. And I'm of the mindset, I believe, Bryan, that when you touch one life and you change it for the better, you've literally changed the next generation, because now they're going to be sharing in a different way. They've been transformed because of your touch, because of your care and compassion, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's so many people have a negative opinion about social media for lots of different reasons. But it does connect us. So I think in so many ways, it has a very positive effect if you make it a positive effect. Because I could have sat there and I could have just typed how sad I was, and that was it. Or I could have shut it down and been even more lonely. Like, I don't want to see the happy people. I had those days. I didn't want to see families on Facebook. But then I realized that I should be joyful for them. Like, I can't be mad that they haven't gone through it. I actually worry for people who haven't gone through grief, because the older they get and go through life where they haven't had that loss, the worse that impact is when it actually really hits. So it's been a very interesting journey. And you say a ripple effect, I have had people reach out to me that have told me in privacy that the day they saw one of my videos or read my blog, and people follow me for different reasons, they told me that that was the day they woke up and they were going to make a decision they couldn't unmake, and they decided not to. They held off. They made it every morning that they would watch one of my videos to remind them every day that I had gone through something difficult, but I found happiness afterwards. And I tell people all the time, like, the only thing that is 100% certain is change. Time's going to change, which means everything else is going to change. So wherever you're sitting right now, at some point, we're all going to have future grief. But you can't worry about that. And if you're in a space of grief, at some point, it'll change. It doesn't go away. You grow through it, but you will have smiles in your future. And if I can just show people that it's possible and it's okay to go back and forth between your hard days or an hour or a song that hits me that kind of hurts, later in the day, I'm going to hear a song that's going to make me smile again. And if I could be that example and start to help with that ripple effect, it's going to make more of an impact. And really, at the end of the day, it also serves and heals me, because it means my story, my loss, isn't for nothing.
Yes.
It's for some reason, whatever that reason is, I don't know. I don't run the universe. I don't think I'd want to run the universe, but for whatever reason, it helps me believe that my losses were meant so that I could help other people. It sucked. It sucks that I had to go through it. But instead of sitting and just being sad and being able to use it, it means that people hear about my dad. It means that people hear about Clayton. Memories are always talked about. It's not just pushed aside and forgotten. So it's very healing for me as well.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think through those shared sharing of your stories with other people, you create this eternal legacy of them, right? It's like the world remembers their name, even though they may not have met them physically. Through this spiritual exchange, they're changing lives too.
Yeah. And that's the amazing thing. And I always remind myself, it just comes back to, Like it's a big fear of people to have their loved ones be forgotten. But if you look even deeper, the biggest fear is that you don't want to be forgotten. It's again that survival. So we are sad when they go, but then we are more sad that more people won't get to know them. But part of that is a reflection that we don't want to be forgotten. Like nobody wants to be forgotten, but that's that just inner deep like start of safety is there. So like honestly, I think my biology degree really helped me a lot. I'm an animal. I have to get yes, I'm a human, and we put ourselves on a pedestal for so many reasons, and we forget that we're animals and we have those instinctual things. And reminding myself of that, I think, has really helped me on those tough days.
You mentioned, you used a phrase, you said that you're able to grow through it. Can we just unpackage that a little bit?
Sure. So I think one of again, everybody wants their feelings validated. And I think, so many people, they mean well when they want you to feel better. And people don't know what to say. And they're so uncomfortable bringing it up that sometimes the wrong words come out. And I always want to tell people who are grieving, because it's very easy to get very mad fast when you feel like somebody said something wrong to you, is just remember either those people didn't go through it or they just want to make sure you're okay. So I tell everybody to give the world a little bit of grace. And benefit of the doubt that when somebody says, hey, have you moved on? Are you over it? They're not saying, hey, have you forgotten about that person because they don't matter anymore? They don't. But because that phrasing is out there, it is a trigger for a lot of people. It was for me. And I go, hey, let's reword it. And because I had to say that so many times, I was like, I'm not ever going to forget about my dad. I'm never going to forget about Clayton. Like we could go back. I'm never going to forget about my grandparents that have passed away, or my friend Matt, who, he died by suicide in high school. I'm never going to forget. And I said, look, I've just always continued to move forward and grow. And that's kind of where it came. I'm like, that's right. I'm growing. And it's a yucky feeling, but if you think about it, where does all of the most wonderful growth happen is in amazing fertilizer. And you can say that you're in a pile of crap, but if you're a plant, that's the best place you can be, because what you're going through, what you're in is going to make you stronger. And you are going to grow. And it feels icky. It feels weird at first. But as soon as you break that surface and you hit the sunlight, you're starting to use all of that grief fertilizer, for lack of a better description right now. You're using that to help actually regenerate yourself. You're never going to be the person you were beforehand. You will change. You always will change. And so I think that's where I started to say to people, oh, no, I'm not over it. I'm growing through it. I'm growing with it. Grief's a part of me, part of every dance. And you have to learn, grief isn't there to ruin your life. It's not grief's fault, honestly. Grief showed up and was like, I'm sorry I have to be here, but I'm here to remind you of all the gifts you do have, of all of the wonderful things, of the beauty of a sunrise, the next person you fall in love with, how much more you want to make sure that person knows, because you may not have said to the person you lost, I love you enough. So I'm just here to remind you of gratitude. And all of that stuff came together, and that's really where that phrase came up for me.
I love that. As you were talking, you actually have a sister dancer. on TikTok and Instagram, and her name is Irene Baxberg, and she dances every day, just like you. And she has a similar phrase, and hers is, "What you thought was meant to bury you was actually planted you."
Yes. I love it. I love it. It's so true. It's so true. It's so true. I think when you don't want to have problems in your life, again, that's, you know, just self-containment and making sure you're safe, but you're not going to get through life without it. So it's going to hurt. You're going to have your days. I still have days where I'm just like not feeling it, and that's okay. But if you can take the garbage that you've been through and recycle it and use it for something else, you can make such amazing things happen. You are stronger. You're stronger. People don't realize that they have survived 100% of the hardest days of their life. I have. I've survived 100% of the most difficult days of my life. And look where I'm at. I've gotten through it all. And if people just remember that, then they can find reason to keep going. And if that's writing, great. If that's sharing on social media, if it's creating a group or this space, this beautiful space that you've created for people to hear stories and support each other and empower each other, like you can change the world. Your grief can literally change the tide for everybody.
I love that. Bryan, I'm going to pause for a moment and allow our sponsor to come on, and we'll be right back. We are back for the second half of Choose the Challenge with special guest Bryan Martin. We're talking about don't let life's hardships keep you down. Bryan has shared his journey through grief and how grief is, as he said, still a part of him, but he is growing through it day by day. And Bryan, I'd like to talk a little bit about this joy that you found and how now are you incorporating dance to showcase this joy to the world?
Even just the word, right? You can just joy. Like it makes your mouth, you smile. You're kind of forced to. It's really interesting how it came about. And I think it ties in again. I talk so much about like just going back to your simple self and what makes you feel safe. And when the pandemic hit and I was stuck at home, basically just finishing up year 2 of being widowed, I was really, really low and just did not feel like myself anymore. Nothing made me smile. I'd go to work. I worked with penguins and sea lions at the time, and it didn't do what it used to. And I knew something was wrong. I'm like, why? This has been my dream forever, and I don't understand. And I'd go home after taking care of the animals, and I was just locked inside. So I had all the time in the world to think about it. And it just wasn't making sense. It wasn't making sense. And I had one of my Facebook friends message me, and she's like, hey, have you seen this app? It's called TikTok. And I was like, you mean the dance thing for 12-year-old girls? I literally hadn't had it. I didn't know what it was. And she's like, no, there's actually a lot of people our age that are on there right now, and they're just being goofy and having fun. you used to love dancing in high school at all the high school dances. Like, you got to go over and at least watch. And I'm not a scroller on social media. I feel like I'm wasting my time and I could be doing something. But I went over there, and for a couple of days I sat there and I watched, and I was looking at it like, these people are just, they're stuck inside, but they're having fun. I was like, and that's when something started to turn in my head. And I'm like, I do love dancing. All right. I haven't listened to music in a long time. It's almost like the grief, my sadness I honestly forgot. And so I started to watch a bit more, and I'm like, you know what? Why don't I try? Nobody knows me, but I love dancing. What if I just put one video up? Let's just see what happens. And so I picked one of the popular dances that was there, and I learned the dance moves, not only just to dance, but to give myself something to do during the time. I had to pay attention, and I posted it. And I was like, all right, here we go. And I put my phone down. And a couple of hours later, there were thousands of comments, and thousands of people started following me. And they're like, you are just having so much fun. It's just fun to watch you. And I was like, oh my goodness, wait a minute. Yes, it was fun. And that reminded me that I had let go of all of the things that I loved, even as a kid. Just all the innocence and the pure, like, I could entertain myself for hours. I could color, I could draw, I could write, I could just be creative in all these different ways as a kid. And I would dance anywhere. I didn't care what anybody thought when I was a kid. And my aunt told me, we were on a train one day, and this memory came into my head of me dancing on a train with all these people watching to a song that happened to be on the train speakers. And I'm like, come on, everybody, let's sing. And she's like, you made everyone smile. And it flooded back to me. I was like, I just did it again. But all I did was I had joy. I just had fun. So from that moment, I forced myself every single day to do at least one dance on TikTok. Just do it, whether I felt it or not, because I knew by the end of that dance, because it was something I always loved, something was going to trip and it was going to make me smile again. And it built and it built and it built. And then Instagram started to have the same kind of videos. And then Facebook, which has always been my home, probably my age of 44, because that's what I grew up with. I started to share them there and started to see the same response from my friends. So it really meant a lot when my friends on Facebook were like, this is great. This reminds us of you're picking songs when we were all in high school together. And I just forgot about my day and remembered all of that. And so I was like, this is great. Why don't I start my day off like this every day instead of doing it at night? Why don't I do it in the morning? Like, hey, good morning to me and everyone else. And that is how all of this, I mean, I have over 1 million followers on all the platforms together. And and they follow me just because of that. And I realized that the magic word we're talking about, joy, was something that I had control over it. And for so long, I had been looking outside of myself for somebody else or something else to give it to me. But then I realized it was never going to show up. I had to make it first and then be grateful for that. And it would grow. And man, has it ever. It's just been that. Once I realized I had the power to do that, everything changed.
Now, I don't even know how I came across one of your videos, but when I saw the first one, I'm like, let me see if I can find some more. And then I started sending them out. And my brother, he's like, oh my gosh, he can dance. So now he's following.
Oh, that's great.
It's just so refreshing. And you said something key about you found joy within, because often we're looking for happiness and love and everything outside of ourselves. But we first have to love ourselves. We first have to realize that we're beings created by love. Joy is there. Sometimes it gets buried in all the muck and the ash and trash, but it's there and it's wanting to come out. And when we're able to release that, like on my platform, Celebrate You, I truly believe that when you're able to love and celebrate all of who you are, then you become that indelible impression in the world. And that's what you are. I mean, you always have been, but now seeing it reflect back to you because the world is actually applauding you. You're helping us to remember, wait a minute, I have joy too. I want to have fun too. And you may be sitting at your desk or having that cup of coffee and you find yourself moving along with Bryan. And I just think it's so beautiful. And sometimes we try to create, I want to say, euphoria in our lives in a very complex manner.
Mhm.
And it's really getting back to basics. Like you said, as a child, it's those simple things can bring so much joy, so much peace, so much satisfaction. And it doesn't mean that the hurt goes away. But as you said, you're able to grow through it. You recognize it, you acknowledge it, but you are living, right? You're like, I'm here. And then for this moment, the world will know my name.
Yes. So many people have said to me, but like, how can you do that online? What if people say something bad about you or make fun of you? I don't care. It doesn't matter. I'm having fun. I'm having a great time. If people, excuse me, if people decide to share like I do on social media, even, I don't know, maybe you're 52 and you love coloring. Well, you color and do it live on Facebook if that's what you want to do, because I don't know, maybe it'll be fun watching you. Like, that's super cool if that's your thing. Don't worry about what other people, they are struggling and their grief is causing them to push you down because they can't figure out how to, they're looking for joy elsewhere and they're not getting it. So if they see somebody who is joyful, they're like, no, you don't get to be joyful. That's where people try to out grief each other. And I don't, no, I just say, I'm sorry that you feel that way. I really, go do something that you're excited and happy about. And there have been people that have messaged me and they have told me, they're like, I couldn't stand you when I saw you on social media. Just that big smile on your face and you're dancing, you're perfect. And then they're like, and then I read your widowed blog and I realized that your life isn't perfect and that you're showing up. And I need to, and this is the person who messaged me, I need to apologize because I tried to rain on your parade and that wasn't right of me when you were trying to just bring the sun out and break the clouds on my day. So I've had people completely switch how they feel because they realize it wasn't me that was annoying with my coffee dance. It was that they were in their own struggle and they just hadn't figured it out yet. So it's just, I tell everyone, just pick your favorite thing ever that you used to do as a kid and just go do it and see how you feel. Just see how it makes you feel to forget the world's problems and how difficult it is and what's going on in the all over the place, and just take 10 minutes to put together a puzzle. Like, if that's what you love to do, just take 10 minutes to build a dinosaur out of Play-Doh. Who cares if you're 62? Who cares if you're 35? Just have a good time and see what it does for your mental, emotional wellness. It's an amazing reset, and you can do that for yourself.
Exactly. I had shared with you before we came on this evening about my dad and his health crises. And when he was in rehab, my father used to be an avid golfer. He's 92. And when he was in rehab, right outside of his room in the courtyard was a little putt-putt golf. And I took him out there and, he had that metal walker, had the gate belt on him to make sure he was stable. And he said, I want to swing a club again. So I gave him the club and I was like amazed. I'm like, whoa, Dad, you still have it. Well, when he was released, he said, you know what I decided I want? And I said, what? He goes, I want to build a professional grade putting green in the backyard. And we're like,
great.
What? So this Tuesday, November 22nd, we are having it built. for him.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I
And so
love
it just goes back to what you're saying. Do whatever it is you love, keep doing it.
Mhm.
Right?
Yes. Yes. You're just you'll be shocked. And maybe, and the thing is, the big thing is once you learn the secret, it shouldn't be a secret. You should tell everybody. So if you know somebody in your life who used to love doing something and now they're in a darker place, remind them of the things, because I needed to
Yes.
be reminded. We all need reminders, and that's okay. It's normal. And if you get the reminder, you can't beat yourself up for getting into a tough spot, because life is hard. But again, that's also it's acceptance, but you're also accepting that you're human and it's allowed. You're allowed to be upset. So forgive yourself if you're upset. Forgive yourself if you had a bad day and you didn't really want to get out of bed. Go, okay, I had a bad I've done that. Like, all right, I had a bad day yesterday, but I'm not going to wallow in the fact that I was having a bad day, because then that just makes another bad day. It doesn't make any sense. Okay, you needed the day off, Bryan. Sure. What do you want to do now? And if you took your dad out golfing, and what a wonderful memory for you, right?
Yeah.
And now it's sparking something in him. He's gonna have a golf course in his backyard. That's
I
awesome.
know. My mom's like, you were 92. He said, I can still swing a club.
Yes. Yes. I love it. It's
Yes.
fantastic.
What you are doing is what Maya Angelou says, that when it's raining, to be the rainbow in someone else's cloud. And you are just that. You are just this beautiful, amazing, radiating rainbow. I don't know you personally, but I just through the airways, I just feel so much love from
Thank you.
you, and I I can't. I'm just anxious to see what more is going to unfold in your life, and to those who are blessed to find you, whether it's in person or on social media, because I guarantee to those of you who are watching, if you just have 5 minutes with Bryan, your life's changed, because I know mine was changed when I saw you.
Oh, thank you. That's so sweet.
So what I would like to do, I want to take myself down, and Bryan, I want you to just think about any lasting words that you'd like to leave with the audience, any messages of hope or inspiration, whatever's on your heart, if that's okay.
Sure. Well, I think everybody at the end of the day should remember that you're special and that you matter, and you're meant to do amazing things if you just let it happen. And things can get tough, but they're not put in your way to make your life tough. I think oftentimes we ask ourselves the why question that never has an answer. And if you dwell on that, then you're going to have a hard time moving forward. You're not going to get to know the why. I don't know why my dad and my partner Clayton had to pass away in the same year. I've asked again and again. I'm not going to get the answer. I don't know if I'm going to ever get that answer directly. So I can't dwell on that. And it's the dwelling on the things we may never know that can kind of keep us from growing. So, of course, I found joy and I found reasons to keep going and being grateful. From that, I've actually started to see that I have answered my own why did this happen to me? Because I'm ahead of where I was before, and I see that I am helping pave the way for so many others. There will always be people that will become widowed. There will always be people that will have grief. But if we can share and make things more normal and show that you can be strong, and show that there's smiles in your future, regardless of what happens, we're all going to be a beacon of light for the people that inevitably will come and follow in our footsteps. So I think when you grab onto your grief and you realize that within it there are many gifts, you will become a stronger person and you're going to make this world a better place.
Thank you so much. This has been so rich, Bryan. Thank you for being a guest on Choose to Challenge.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And this is a wonderful, wonderful space. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you. And to our listening audience, I want to just first of all wish you happy, happy holidays. As Bryan said, it can be a dark and scary time, especially when you're going through those first. But just remember that you're not alone. As Bryan said, you matter, you're special. Find that community, find that tribe to latch on to, and if you need to, definitely reach out to Bryan Martin on all things social media. He's not here to give professional medical advice, but he's here to say, I get it, I feel you, I hear you, and I'm here to support and lift you up. And when all things else fail, find him and just smile, because his dance team will make you smile. And always remember that in life, when your visions intersect with opportunity, success is inevitable. So be bold, be daring, choose to challenge, and live your best life ever. Until next week, everyone, goodbye.